Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah McIntyre. How are you doing? As we are approaching the end of season 5, I'm probably going to play around with doing some shorter length episodes. There's so many things that I want to say, but I am also so busy with so many projects at the moment. It's just easier for me to record diddy ones, get them out there. Although, as you can tell, I'm in a chatty mood, so this may not end up being a diddy one after all. We will see. Today, I wanted to go back into the physical mediumship, trance mediumship, what is actually possible kind of conversation, because it's been a journey, as it always is. Now, one of the things that you will have heard me say many times is that I've never had a spirit appear to me and tell me this was my journey. And I haven't, but weirdly, recently, I've reconciled a part of my journey, which I may have mentioned before, but because I keep putting it in a box. I think it was so mind-blowing that my brain locks it away, and then every now and again it bursts forth and goes, "Remember me?" And I go, "Oh God, yeah. Oh God, so that did happen." And then it gets locked away again, and it's just really odd. What can you do? So when I first started working with spirit, and my friend said to me, "Come along to my group, you're shiny, you'll enjoy working with spirit." And I went, as you all know, so that I could be an audience member. I never thought I was going to participate. And forgive me if I've told you this story, guys, but it's relevant, so we'll go through it. Anyway, what happened was we ended up in this lady's living room, my first teacher. It wasn't like I imagined a spiritual place to be. It smelt of dog. She had 2 lovely dogs, but dogs smell. I've got 2, I admit that. And we were jammed into her dining room with the dining table pushed up against a wall. And I was in this space with this group of very earnest, lovely people, but who all took it incredibly seriously, which no shade for, good, but it was just a lot. And they, to be fair to them, were an advanced circle. So I probably shouldn't have started in an advanced circle because it was a lot, but that's how the journey ended up going for me. And I remember the first week that I was there, and we had to just all sit in a circle, and it was a bit awkward, and we were supposed to meditate, but I didn't really understand what was happening. I'd never meditated before. And then one of the gentlemen that was there came up, was sharing messages, and he said, "My guide was a big Indian, and he stood behind you, and he was pushing you onto your shoulders and pushing you into the group." And I remember thinking, what, behind me? He was touching me? Oh my God. And really sort of creeped out by it all. I remember driving home and being scared to look in my rearview mirror in case there was a spirit sat in my back seat and I'd crash my car and join the spirit world. So it was a very overwhelming experience. And I would sit in the group and not really say a lot, believe it or not. And then when my friend would drive us back to her house, where I would then drive on from, I would sort of ask her all of my questions, like, why did this happen? What does this mean? What's going on there? And she would just get peppered with my never-ending questions. And after I've been going, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we were doing the usual thing. So sitting in this dining room, in dim light, but still lights were on, candles were lit, side light was there, and meditating. And that day, I was there with my eyes shut, and the circle leader started talking. Now, in a great irony, I can't remember what it was she was talking about, the content of the message. But I do remember thinking, oh, her voice sounds really different. But just sort of there with my eyes shut, and then, I'm trying to get in the experience, and I can hear this person talking, and she's talking, she's sharing this message, but at the same time my brain is going, what's happening? I've got an itch. Is this how I'm supposed to be? Am I doing this right? Is everybody else looking at me? Does everybody else have their eyes shut? God, this chair's uncomfortable. And going through all of my dialogue. Anyway, me being me, swallow, choke on my own dribble. You couldn't get a more classic Hannah move. And I'm trying not to cough because I don't want to disturb everybody else in this very serious circle. So I lean forward, go, get my glass of water, pick it up and have a big swig of my glass of water. And as I do, my eyes move across the room and I look at where the circle leader is sitting. And the circle leader has disappeared. Jill has gone. And in her place is this tiny little elderly black lady with glowing eyes. And I behaved in that moment exactly like a cartoon character does when they have disbelief. In that my eyes went wide and I was shocked. It looked like the spirit was looking directly at me. I was so shocked, I closed my eyes, I opened them again, the spirit was still there. I rubbed my eyes, I opened them again, the spirit was still there. And I got to sit and watch that spirit talk for 5 minutes, approximately. And then the spirit started to fade and the circle leader came back into view. And I never said a word to anyone until I got in the car with my friend and then went, holy shit, what the hell was that? And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I want to start by making it really clear that I believe that physical mediumship in some forms is possible. I really do, because I have seen it. And I saw it for a long time. This wasn't a flicker out the corner of my eye. This was a lengthy thing. And I know that you're probably listening to this going, but you said you'd never seen a apparition. And you know what? It's so weird. It's like my brain can't compute it. They're both true to me. I have seen that in that environment, but I've never had anything like that just appear unexpectedly to me. I've never had a loved one. I've never had one of my guides appear like that. And I have seen some other cool stuff. I've seen a lot of transfiguration energy. I've got a trance recording of me talking in trance somewhere. I don't even know where it is, which is weird, where my whole face just disappears. I've got no features. So I know that there's certain bits of aspects and energies and things like that. You know, I have friends that have seen things that I know, absolutely, I believe, absolutely. But you knew there was a but coming. I've also had those experiences when, for example, I went to see quite a well-known trance medium with a friend of mine, and we were really, really excited. And I thought they were just going to channel their spirit guide. And they channeled my friend's friend who was in spirit. But then they got things wrong. And I remember sitting there thinking, but if this is your friend speaking, then she would know that you drank Prosecco, not tea. Why do they keep getting that wrong? And I accept in mediumship that mediums can get things wrong. I absolutely do. Spirit are never wrong. Spirit don't make mistakes. Spirit don't misremember. Spirit don't misrepresent, ever. But I accept that I can get things wrong. And I remember sitting through, and my friend was much more responsive than me because I was sort of sat having this existential crisis of my dream being popped. I was waiting to have this amazing experience with a trance medium and the spirit guide and this amazing message. And when they started, when it was just all a bit strange, it just didn't feel real to me. and I felt so sad. So I was very quiet because I was feeling very sad. So they didn't interact with me much. Now, that sadness may well have created a difficult energy for that medium to work in. I didn't know then what I know now. So I accept that. But I did feel really disheartened with it all. And then the only message that Spirit apparently had for me was, you can do this if you want to. You could be a medium. Which was a little disheartening because at that stage in the game, I'd already been working as a medium for about 5 years. So I was a little disheartened by that message. I am, guys, I am working as a medium. But that's by the by. And that was the only thing apparently that Spirit wanted to say to me. And maybe that was all they wanted to say to me, but it just didn't feel like they were truly working with Spirit. And then I listened. I'm trying to get the order right for you guys, and I may be jumping around in timelines because memory is a funny thing. But then I listened to the Fake Psychic podcast, and I listened to how they faked these things, how they did these things, how they were breaking in to people's bedrooms when they were staying at the venue and stealing their belongings so that they could apparate them later. And all of this stuff. And I remember going up into the library at Arthur Findlay College, and everyone was oohing at all the Victorian pictures of physical mediumship. And I was like, but you can see that's a muslin cloth. Like, that's not an ooh. That's a, oh dear, surely. Which then started the question of how much of our expectations about what is possible with mediumship have been defined by fraud. And how much are we holding ourselves accountable to things that aren't really possible? So when I saw Jill and that apparition, that spirit was not saying, look at me and you will see Spirit. Look at me and then you will know. That spirit was just doing their thing. Now, did they make me choke on my dribble? Maybe. Did I choke on my own dribble? Also maybe. So we don't really know, but it ended up with me having that experience. But there's something in the very act of demand, which I know I've talked about recently, that I think makes mediumship harder. And I think for physical mediumship, that's got to be the case, because the more expectation, the higher the pressure. You know, how do you say to a room full of grieving people who want to see Spirit, it's just not happening today? And I think that that's because we don't talk about how these things really work. I have had to refund money to people when I have done mediumship readings because I have not been able to get into the zone properly. And that's no reflection on their loved ones. It's just to do with me. Sometimes it's to do with the energy the sitter brings, but in that case, I still hold myself accountable for that, and I still will refund. There's no shame in that. But I think this kind of performance aspect, where we're expecting it to always be something, where we're expecting it to always be delivered, can be problematical. And I still maintain the previous things that I have said, which is, I don't think there's any shame in saying in trance mediumship, it's a collaboration. I think the problem comes when we start saying it was all Spirit and nothing to do with me. Because if it was all Spirit, then why can't you get into trance mediumship with my grandmother and my grandmother come through and state her name? Why do you need an interpreter? Don't worry, I know I've said these things before, but I'm just setting the scene. So I had all of that going on. Things that I know to be true, things that I have massive question marks over, as well as, have Spirit really got nothing more to say than what Silver Birch said all those years ago? Has the message not evolved? Has it not changed? Has it not shifted? Because most of the time when I see trance mediums, they are saying the same old, same old. And I honestly believe that that's to do with valves and expectations. And that is the medium opening up, expecting Spirit to talk about love thy neighbour, because that's what Spirit normally talk about and how the only path is love. And so that's all that spirit are able to bring through. It doesn't mean it's not true, but there doesn't really seem to be that much evolution. You know, you've got these amazing channeled information coming through from people, and then it kind of plateaus again. If Neil Donald Walsh can do conversations with God and completely question and pull apart everything, then why is it when you go to see a trance medium, they're saying exactly the same stuff that they've always said? And I think that's to do with the medium, because I think that all mediumship is a collaboration. It's not spirit coming in and taking over, it's a partnership. And sometimes that partnership will work better than other days. That's okay. Now, I have seen things like we did table tipping in one of my groups, and you could see the surface of the table change molecular structure. I don't know. It started to look no longer solid and it was moving, and we all saw that. But how much of table tipping is just us calling forth an energy, like spoon bending? Uri Geller does not say spirit bent that spoon. He says, I bent that spoon with my intention. How much of that table moving was us calling our own power forth and psychic energy forth to move that table? And the answer is, I don't know. But I will say this, if you want to do a Ouija board, you have to have your fingers on it. They don't move by themselves. My grandmother does not write by herself. If you are doing channeled writing, you have to hold a pen. So there has to be some kind of collaboration in it. And the reason why I think these things are important is because in the world that we live in, where people for some reason haven't really explored mediumship, and there's been this kind of it is what it is and that's how it is mentality all the way through. We don't ask questions, we just do. Well, why not? Why are spirit offended by questions? Why don't they want to discuss how much is our limitations and how much is the laws of this physical plane and how much is spirit? Why can't we discuss these things? Because spirit are unlimited. I absolutely believe that. I believe that there's something about the earthly experience where it's not supposed to be like we wish it was all the time. You know, I think we've had incarnations where we see spirit like we see each other. And this physical world, you might get the odd golden nugget, but you don't get the full thing all the time. So that's all going on. And I just can't shake this. If it's spirit speaking through somebody in trance, why can't they do it in another language? So I'm questioning all of that, as you know. And then Jenny Juranics, Spirit Call podcast in Canada, friend of the show, she releases a podcast talking about her amazing experiences in a physical mediumship circle, seminar, something. And I remember I was painting my shed and listening to it, and I was so filled with envy. I felt like spirit were having a party with loads of other people, and I wasn't invited. And that's honestly how it felt. I'm trying to be true here. I was jealous. And I listened to the wonder in her voice and the magic of the experience that she had had. And I felt jealous. And I sat with that jealousy, and I sat with spirit. And I'm trying to make sure I've got this in the right order. There was also somebody else emailing me saying, I think you're wrong about trance mediumship. And it was a very open conversation. We were back and forthing about it. And then they sent me a link to a physical medium who gets what appears to be plastic or glass, brightly coloured gems that fall out their eyeballs. And I just looked at that and thought, I don't believe it, in honesty. I don't believe it because of my overriding logic, which is a blessing and a curse. But if spirit can make a gem fall out of your eyes, why can't they manifest a piece of paper with your grandparents' address on? What is the difference in all of that? I just don't. Anyway, so we went through all of this and I felt, it was really hard because I felt simultaneously jealous, but also I just couldn't switch off my logic. I couldn't switch it off. And then I started researching. I mean, I say researching, it wasn't exactly hard. Putting in different physical mediums' names into Google along with fraud. And of course, when you do that with any medium, I did look up myself. There's nothing about me yet. I'm sure it will happen at some point. Of course, there are people saying it's too generic. They're cold reading the audience, all of that stuff. But I did go through most of the mediums I know and see if there was anything written about them being actively fraudulent. And I have to say, with most of the mental mediums that I know, people who do evidential like me, there wasn't a lot. But when you get into the physical mediums, there's a lot. And so I was looking at these different physical mediums that are supposed to be amazing and like following this fraud trail. And then I hear Jenny say on her podcast, which is how I know my timeline's slightly out, the name of one of the physical mediums she's been learning with and having these amazing experiences with. And it's one of the people that I have seen online with video evidence of them standing up, getting out of the cabinet, taking off their clothes and wafting their clothes around to create a breeze. And their argument for why that happened is they don't remember any of it, spirit were doing it. And again, the logic of why would spirit do something to prove that they're there, but defraud it when they would have known it was being recorded. They would have known someone had sneaked a camera in. Spirit know everything. So all of that's going on. And I'm torn between telling Jenny what I've seen and not wanting to taking that wonder out of her voice because it was magical. And I remember after seeing the Trance medium, my friend said to me, "You are the thief of joy." And she was joking, but also speaking the truth, because as soon as we left, I went into analysis mode. It was a science experiment. But what about this? But what about that? And not for 1 second did I stop to think about how my friend would feel when she thought she just had a communication from her best mate and I pulled it out from under her. And that was my bad. That was really poor in me. I go so far down the analysis that I forget sometimes to be soft and kind and think about other people. And I understand that about myself. So I had that kind of in my head, like, should you? And I kept thinking about it. And then one day I messaged Jenny and just said, "Hey, Jenny, I've heard you mention so-and-so. Here's a video, here's an article, here's another article. Can you tell me what you think?" And she, as she says on her own podcast, basically didn't want to engage in it. She didn't want to hear about the fraud reports. She wanted to hold on to what she believed in the magic. And that is her right, absolutely. And then what has sadly happened is I have ended up being the thief of her joy to a certain extent, because she has gone to another retreat seminar with this medium and she has seen it for herself. And if you want to listen to Spirit Call podcast, you will hear her talk. She's done 2 episodes now, all about her experiences, what she saw and the fallout from that. And I feel sad about it all, because I knew what I knew but I also didn't want to know what I knew. You know, I didn't want to be right. But I'm over here like busting a gut. Is my evidence good enough? Is it specific enough? Trying not to look at the audience so I can't cold read people. Someone said to me the other day, why are you always looking at the back of the room? Is that because where the spirits are stood? And I'm like, no, it's because I'm trying not to look at you guys. Like, I'm trying so hard. And then we've got people doing, she talks about it, putting on a Halloween mask, spitting on their hand and putting it out and pretending it's a slimy ectoplasm hand. All of this absolutely vile shit. And then people who see that and believe it are then going to expect me to be able to produce something incredible and physical. And it just takes all of the magic out of it. Like when I was at Tunbridge Wells, somebody put their hand up and said, we always get a lot of phenomena at Tunbridge Wells. I think it's because it was owned by a guy that did experiments with energy and electricity and sound. So it's got this really cool vibe. It's got a massive organ at the back of the stage, and it's always got like there's a static in the air you can feel. And people often see spirits walking around on the stage behind me, only as lights, not full-blown apparitions and stuff like that. They see me glowing. People come up to me afterwards and say, oh my God. And a lady asked and one of her parents was dying, and she wanted to know if the other parent in spirit was there, and all the lights in the venue turned on and off. And I was so excited by that. So I know that they can do stuff, but they don't do it all the time. And I don't think we should feel disheartened that they don't. I think there has to be a real need, not a demand, not a showboat, but a real need. And even when there is a real need, it doesn't mean that they can always manifest that way. When I was quite early on my journey, there was a hairdresser up the road from me, and I used to have this very intense 2-colour process done on my hair. I'd be there for about 4 hours. And I turned up one day and the hairdresser said, my mum, something's going on with my mum. And I was like, oh God, what is that energy? And I said to her, I think you need to go home. And she said, no, I'll do your hair. And all the lights in the salon went on and off. And I said, I really feel like you should go home. And she went, no, I'm going to do your hair. And all the lights in the salon went on and off, and then on and off again. And basically, we're like 2 hours into my hair. And every time she mentions her mum, the radio turns itself up, or it turns itself down, or the lights turn on or off, or the hairdryer someone else is using. And yeah, I know a naysayer would say electricity problems, but it wasn't everything. That was the thing. The lights would turn off, but the radio would still play. The radio would turn up, but the lights would be the same. And eventually it got to the point where it was like a strobe light. And it was so surreal that neither of us could kind of compute it. And I remember looking at her in the mirror and going, go, you need to go now. And all the lights were flashing on and off. And she went, okay, I'm going. And she had to call someone from another salon to cover my hair. And as soon as she left, everything stopped. Everything went to normal. So I think they can do it when it's really, really important, or when the energy is right. But I don't know. And if you are a physical medium, or you work in that, can you explain to me the purpose of a cabinet? Because for the life of me, it only makes sense as somewhere to commit fraud from. Because spirit are beyond the confines of any physical space. So what does a tent do? What does a tent do? I don't understand it. The only reason I can think that you would ever need a cabinet is so that you can do sneaky things hidden in it. And if spirit can apparate a fully formed arm that you can physically touch, why can't they write your loved ones' names down and give everybody in that room something? Why do you have to be holding a hand? If they're holding a hand and a hand is out and you don't recognise it, why wouldn't they put out your mum's hand with her jewellery on? Why wouldn't they? Why would it be a hand with no adornments? Just none of it makes any logical sense to me if it's true. Why does it have to be in pitch black? Why is something that comes from the light reactive to the light? I can understand dimness because you see more in the dimness, but I don't understand why it needs to be that you can't see a hand waving in front of your face. These things are red flags for me. And I think even though we want these things to be true so badly, we have to accept that wanting it doesn't make it okay, doesn't make it real. So that's kind of been really interesting. And I do recommend that you go listen to Jenny's podcast, because it's just, even if you don't believe it or agree with it, just be a bit wiser. Just be a bit wiser, because do you want spirit to be just true at any cost, or do you want it to be true and proven? And I guess with mediumship, we fit into two camps. And I kind of miss the days when it was magical and, you know, I'd be so blown away by a feather or a feeling. I miss those days. I'm probably too far in analysis, but it's also really, really important, I think. Interestingly, I had somebody I did a reading for put an Instagram post up about me saying that I had channeled some Gaelic, Celtic, something like that, from their grandmother when I was doing a reading for them. Now, I have no memory of that, but that was quite interesting to me, because was that spirit trying to show me that you can do occasional sentences in another language if you have surrendered enough and got enough of a blend, but it wouldn't be a permanent full address. It would just be a moment. I don't know. I would love to know what you think, but I definitely think we need to be joyous with the stuff we do get, joyous with the energy and the information and the evidence, but not silly about it. And has this just become this self-fulfilling prophecy where people did it as fraud back in the days of fake psychic, back in the days of Victorian times, and now we're kind of setting that as the standard for all mediumship, when actually it's not possible? And if it's not possible, why is it not possible? Is it because of the laws of this physical space, this incarnation, this world? Is it because of us as mediums, we haven't developed into that kind of space yet? Is it, I mean, why? Why do you think that is? And I think that's important to question within yourself. Why is it that you can get certain bits of evidence but not others? Why is it that sometimes you can get a spirit's name and then other times it feels like you're being really woolly? How much of that is spirit? How much is you? Where are you at with it? And being in that space. I just want to finish by saying how brave I think Jenny's been, really, because it's one thing to be like me and be putting these questions out there. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I know that some people really dislike me. I know that I constantly put the cat amongst the pigeons, and I know that a lot of people think I'm a cocky little upstart, and they would be right. But it is another thing to work with a teacher, to be in that space, to release a podcast saying that they are the mutts nuts and they're so amazing, and then have to backtrack on all of that and take those podcasts down and say, I was duped, I was misled. I think that is an incredibly brave thing to do. And listening to Jenny's Going Back to It podcast today, where she is talking, you know, people are saying, how is he getting away with this? And for the most part, it appears to be intimidation and threatening people. It's just so sad, isn't it, that is the state of affairs. Imagine if you're a grieving mum and you go to him and you see him faking. And imagine if you're a grieving mum and you've gone and you've held his hand covered in spit and you wanted it to be the hand of your child, and now that has been taken away from you. My mum always tells this story about my uncle when I first started doing this work. And he, with no ill intention at all, he said to her, "She just make it all up," because he couldn't comprehend that I really do believe what I believe. It was so far removed from him that he just couldn't grasp it. And I know that they're uncomfortable with it. They never talk to me about it, and that's fine. But I really believe in mediumship. I really believe in spirit. And I just think, shame on you if you are defrauding people. And we've all just got to be questioning all the time. I love people that question. I love people that respectfully don't believe what I believe. I have no problem with that. If you're going to come and call me a charlatan, a fraud, all the things I get called online, I'm not interested in engaging with you. But people who say, "I'm just not convinced," they're my favourite. Because I tell you what, I'm sceptical too. Isn't that a great place to be on this adventure where you are pushing at the edges of what is possible and trying to understand it and the part that we all play? So keep your skeptical heads on. Question and be brave and question the messages you've had in the past that meant so much to you. Be brave and question how much information you gave that medium. If you've been in a physical mediumship space and you believe that you held your mum's hand, why? Think about it. How much was it that you just wanted to hold your mum's hand? And if you did, great, fantastic. I'm so happy for you. God, I want this to be real so much. I want it to be real so much. But it just doesn't seem to work like that. I don't know. Not that much shorter than usual anyway. I knew I was going to go on a lot, but listen, tell me what you think, get involved, wade in. I would love to pop back to this on season 6. And if you've had an amazing experience at a physical mediumship retreat, let me know about it. Equally, if you've been to a physical mediumship seminar and you've lost a ring or a watch that was very meaningful to you, or that you've lost while you're there and it's apparated, just think about that. Just think about it a little. Oh God, I don't know. I don't want to be the thief of your joy. Listen to Fake Psychic. Listen to Jenny's podcasts. Listen to this one. Get back to me. Let's try and work out a consensus. I don't think we can, but let's try. And I will catch up with you all again soon.